Hello, welcome to, I did it again. I always say hello the same way. Welcome to day 6 of Rock the R. It's our last night. And tonight I have Liliana Diaz-Vasquez joining us. We're going to be talking about treatment of trill and flap R. We have had so many great conversations in the series, so thank you guys for joining us. All of these replays are available on my Instagram feed, but you can also find them at speechiethings.com. And before I forget, don't forget that we still have that freebie that I'll be sending out on Monday. And most of my guests have generously donated 1 or 2 pages of something to add to that to kind of get you set up for the year. Buenas noches. And yeah, I'll have the link available to you, but it's speechiethings.com/rock-the-r-freebie. And let me see if she is ready for us. Invite. I can't believe it's our last night. It should be a good one. She told me I need these.
Hi.
Hey, I'm ready for you.
How are you?
Oh my gosh, I'm at my brother's house right now.
Oh.
So we've been traveling with a 1-year-old. You know how that goes.
Oh my God, yes.
But
we haven't tried traveling yet. We're kind of scared to try it.
I understand why you would be scared.
We're gonna wait a little longer.
How old? Your little boy's name is
Itza.
Itza.
Itzael.
Itzael. And he's just a little bit younger, I think, than my baby.
Yeah, so your baby is how?
She's about almost 18 months.
Oh, okay. So Itza just turned 1 June 21st. So he's like 13 months right now.
Oh my God. Happy birthday to him.
Oh, thank you.
Well, you guys, this is Liliana Diaz-Vasquez. She is from Chicago. She is a school-based speech therapist, and you work with early childhood through elementary mostly, right?
Yeah, so currently I work at one school in a community that's largely Latinx and bilingual English Spanish speaking. My school is pre-K through 8th grade, but I primarily work with pre-K through 3rd. Like I hardly ever get any like 8th grade referrals. Once in a while, like once in a blue moon, but it's mostly like pre-K through 3rd, I would say. It's the majority of my caseload.
Awesome. And yeah, I'm just so excited for you to be here. I get questions about working on these variations of R all the time, and I'm like, I'm not your girl. I don't know. I've never had to do it. I just haven't come across it in the clinic.
So question, can you trill the R sound? Can you do it?
Is it cheating if I already can?
Oh, I mean,
yes.
No,
like the
cheating.
Perro.
Yeah.
Churro.
You got it. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I was just wondering. I was like wondering if I would have to like really kind of teach you. Or
you know what though?
You kind of know.
I think it would be great if let's pretend like I can't. You know, so y'all, part of the reason I have Q-tips is because I honestly don't know why I have Q-tips, but I'm excited to find out. But Liliana is going to teach me the trill and the flap R. But do you want me to, I'll kind of go through the questions first.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, you just stop me if you ever need to. So could you explain a little bit, what languages or dialects would we see the trill and the flap R in?
So with trill and flap R, a lot of the times it's commonly associated with Spanish, but it exists in other languages. But I feel like a lot of people think it's just like Spanish only, but it really isn't. It's a common, or both of them are common sounds in a variety of languages. So you see, like, for example, trilled R in languages like Greek, Italian, Portuguese. And you see like tap R, which, by the way, for those that are joining, they're pronounced completely different, but they're both very high frequency phonemes in all of these languages. In Spanish, they are crucial to a lot of the words that we say. And if you person that is a Spanish speaker, for example, or even let's say a Portuguese speaking person, if they're unable to produce the trilled R or the tap R, it can really make a huge difference in what you're saying in the word. So like, for example, the word car in Spanish would be carro. So that's with the trill. And then if a person is unable to trill their R, they might say something like caro, caro. And now you're saying expensive. So it's like a whole nother word. So it's a high frequency word. It's pretty important in the language. So as you can imagine, for predominantly Spanish speaking students that you may get on your caseload, this is just like the English are a really important, phoneme that you want your student to work on and eventually master.
Absolutely. I saw a good question come in. We'll probably get to this for our next question. So the next thing we're going to talk about is she's going to kind of teach me how she would teach a student how to say these things. But this specific question was, please tell us some common terms used in Spanish to describe the trill versus flapped R.
Oh, yeah, of course. So the introduction to the R. So you might hear the R called trilled R in English, or in Spanish, doble R. So double R in English is what that translates to. Strong R is another name for it. So la R fuerte is another way that people refer it to. Or the technical term would be voiced alveolar trill, is what you would refer it to from the speech world. Unless, you're working with older clients, you could just, reference it that way. But I usually don't call it that with my little ones. But voiced alveolar trill for trilled R, or voiced alveolar tap or flap for the R flap. And for that sound, you typically hear words like the soft R and the tap R. The flap R is like other ways that you'll hear other people refer to it. Or in Spanish, you'll hear ere. Ere is the soft R, and ere is the strong R, is what you would kind of refer to those in terms of names.
Okay. So I mean, if I had to guess, I would think that the flap R or the tap R is a little bit easier to teach.
Yes.
I
Yeah. So,
imagine.
so, with, I guess as a bilingual SLP, having taught, English R, vocalic R, trilled R, flap R, I would say flat if I were to rate them for me based on my experience, I would say tap is probably easier, and then for me, more so like that English R, then vocalic, and then trilled. I would definitely say trilled R is so hard to really teach. But it's possible. I've had some students really be able to eventually meet that goal and be able to trill their tongue to say the trilled R sound. I've had like several students that I've worked on with that sound before, and it's tricky. It's really hard. Just like, the R kids that we have on our caseload, like you see these students for sometimes couple years until they eventually, get that sound. And then of course you have like your perfect students that eventually master it within a year or so. But trilled R, I think, is the toughest, but it's totally teachable. You can trill your R. Anyone can trill their R. It just takes lots of practice and lots of tips and tricks to really get to vibrate your tongue. So I'll talk about like some of the things that I do in therapy, and I had to write them down just because like I was thinking back to like all my students and like things that I like would tell them, or strategies that I would use in therapy, and I just kind of had to like write them down so that I could go through all of them.
Oh my, and so I'm sure it's so different for every kid, whatever's going to work. So I'm excited.
Yeah. So, which one do you want me to start with first?
Let's start with the easy
flat?
one. Yeah,
Okay,
let's
flat.
do flat first.
Okay, so flapped R, as I said, voiced alveolar tap is what it's called, and we said that it's very common in other languages like Arabic, Polish, Tagalog, Portuguese. So this one for our bilingual speakers will be a lot easier if your student already has a D sound in their phonemic inventory. So if your student is able to pronounce a D, they could possibly get that tap R pretty quickly. A lot of English speakers already kind of say this sound with some of the words that we have, such as better, water. The tap R is, as in the name, voiced alveolar tap, is pronounced at the alveolar ridge. It's done with a very light contact. So if you think of the D sound in English, it's pretty hard. You go duh, duh,
Right.
duh. It's like pretty like it hits it right on the alveolar ridge. With the tap, it's a very like sudden, like really light contact. So when I'm working with my students, I really try to emphasize the word light, like very light, very soft, as in the name soft R, la R suave. So it's a very slight touch, and we practice it with the D sound and kind of getting it really, really like very, very, very soft and just going really, really fast. So we'll do that as one of the strategies. And then also let me just pull this up. So this is just one of the worksheets that I use a lot to warm up to that sound. And this one right here is where we have the D sound, if you can kind of see that. So I'll have the student go and just kind of run their finger on that D sound and just practice that too. Now for Spanish speakers, I typically try to go from like a T sound, so and then add voicing to it. So we'll start off with like, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. And then just add to really once again get the placement there and just kind of get the emphasis on like the light contact. And then after we do kind of that isolation, and depending on the student, we might stay on that for a while. But then typically what I'll move on to are some for like bilingual speakers to those words that I was referring to. So I like to practice words like, if you can see that, butter, water, ladder, bitter, because of the way those words are pronounced in English, it kind of mimics that R sound.
Right.
And then in Spanish, I like to focus on kind of syllable sounds. So say if I have a student that, only speaks Spanish, I'll work on those syllable sounds like ara, ere, iri, oro. So that once again, it practices that movement. And the reason why with those words is because the flap R occurs in the medial position of words in Spanish, or at the final position of words. So we'll practice in those syllables to kind of get the similar like word structure, syllable structures in the words.
Okay.
So those are just some of the ways for tap. And then you can also elicit it with an L sound as well too, just to get that placement right at the alveolar ridge. And then just kind of work to tap lightly. La, la, la. So you could do that with L, D, T, assuming your students have those sounds on their in their phonemic inventory for tap R.
Okay.
So yeah, what do you think, Lindsay? Is that?
I mean, I'm like hanging on every word you're saying. I think it's so cool. And so it seems, so would you usually see this as an error in younger kiddos, I guess?
So, based on developmental norms, the soft R or R flap, based on acquisition norms, we usually see that sound anywhere from like 4 to 5.
Okay.
So sometimes with my students, like in that age range, I will focus on that sound depending on, how common that error is and how frequently it appears when, they're communicating, or whether they have other errors. It just really depends on, like, if I have a student with a variety of errors, that it might not be a sound I'll focus on right away, but
Yeah.
it's definitely in that age group. It's one of
Okay.
the earlier sounds.
Well, let's do the big boy.
All right, the big
Let's do the
boy. So,
R fuerte.
yes, so
I messed that
trills
up.
are voiced alveolar trill.
Okay.
So before I even get to placement with the trilled R, I like to kind of think of it as this like hierarchy I like to go through.
Mhm.
I like to go through first relaxation techniques,
Okay.
because the the way your tongue produces the sound is through the relaxation of the tongue and the airflow, the airstream that's passing through. It's completely different compared to our English R, whereas our
Yeah.
English R, it's an active movement, and depending on how you pronounce it, whether like bunched up in the back or rather retroflex, your tongue is actually making that swoop, that movement when you're producing English R. Whereas in Spanish, for example, the trilled R, your tongue is relaxing.
Hmm.
And I like to think of it as just kind of like how my hand is. It's very flat, kind of opens up from the sides, makes contact sometimes with the teeth. So I'm just going to trill my tongue so that you guys can kind of see like where my tongue is at. So the flaps almost, or the sides I should say, kind of almost flatten wide enough to almost cover all of this right here. But in order to trill, once again, you have to relax. So I really focus on relaxation in the beginning, and we might just work on just relaxing the face, dropping the jaw, bringing your tongue down a little, just letting it kind of like sit there. And we might do that a couple times just to really get that into your students' like mindsets. Like, you have to relax. Like, think of your tongue as a flag in the wind that's just kind of like waving.
Love that.
And I use this like gesture a lot to like with my like younger students for trill. So we'll do this a lot. You'll see like me
Okay.
kind of go like reference like that for trilling. But with trilling, you might think that you're actually making your tongue go like that, but you're not. It's the airflow. So we'll do that first, work on relaxation, work on breathing, and just kind of getting, just breathing out air with a nice, like flat, relaxed tongue in the beginning. So I'll work on that first. After we do airflow, or after we do relaxation, we'll work on the airflow. And then I'll have them breathe in through their nose and then out through their mouth while having their tongue on the alveolar ridge. So it might look like something like this. Almost like a TH sound, but it's on the alveolar ridge. So I'll breathe in through my nose and then out through my mouth with my tongue on the alveolar ridge. So breathing out, and just kind of once again having that tongue relax there, just sit there on the alveolar ridge, just so that they get the placement and that they understand the air has to flow through your tongue down the middle so that the air could eventually make it vibrate. So we'll do that a couple of times too. So once we do relaxation techniques, breathing, breathing in through the nose and out with the tongue on the palate, then I like to go through placement. And I might work on placement for like a very long time just to make sure that the student understands where the tongue is positioned on the palate. So once again, with trilled R, the placement is similar to our D and our L sound. So I like to elicit trilled R with those phonemes a lot. So we might just start working on making a D sound and make sure you're touching that bumpy spot at the top. or la, 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 just to make sure that the placement is just right there. And then once they understand placement, then I like to work on making sure that my students understand what the vibration might even like feel like. So this is like, of course, the student's not able to trill their tongue yet, but I want to give them that sensation of what it feels like to even just kind of get there. So that's where our handy dandy Q-tips come into play. So with the vibration, so first we might, or what I'll do is I'll have the student make a D sound. So I'll tell the student, okay, you're going to make a D sound. You're going to go pretty fast. Then we're going to put this Q-tip under the tongue and I'm going to lift a little. You're going to keep saying that D sound and the airflow is going to get restricted, but you're going to keep going so that the airflow will kind of cause a little sensation, a little vibration as you're saying that D sound. It's not going to be a perfect trill, but this is just to kind of get somewhat close to the trill sound that we're trying to get to. So it'll look something like this. So with your Q-tip, you're going to have your student, I'm going to get really close to you, you can see my mouth. So you're going to go. Kind of like that, just to, once again, keep the airflow going, get that tongue up, kind of have that sensation almost of trilling, so that they can kind of get an idea. It's like, what is it that I'm looking for? Like, what is it that it's going to somewhat feel like? So we'll do that, you know, several times in the sessions. And you should almost kind of feel like a little buzzing sensation at the alveolar ridge to kind of mimic that trill.
Question.
Yeah.
Can you show me again? Is it like
okay, so you're saying your D sound.
Closer to the front?
So yeah, closer to the front because you're saying your D sound and you're gonna lift up. So lift like up with the Q-tip. Make sure so I'm looking at your tongue, it looks, just keep it nice and flat. So once this is after following all through those steps where it's like relaxation and like making it nice and like, you know, flat. But so the D sound, I would say it like this. So keep the Q-tip, terrible job. Keep the Q-tip under your tongue. Like keep it like bring it closer to like the inner corners of like your lip, and then push up. So just keep saying that D sound, and once again, the airflow should kind of restrict, and you should kind of feel almost like a little buzzing. At the alveolar ridge. But nice, like how that comment, yes, wide flat tongue. That's really important, and that's why we focus on that in the beginning, before we even start like these next techniques. And I'll probably last like several sessions just from, like I said, those relaxation techniques, and just kind of getting that airflow as well, where I kind of start first. So that's just one strategy. The next one with the Q-tip, or with another Q-tip if you already kind of wet this one. It's kind of similar, but it's once again to kind of get that sensation of the trill. It's not necessarily to make your tongue trill, but just to kind of get close so that your student kind of knows what it is that you're looking for. So same thing, you're going to say the D sound, keeping the tongue nice and wide, and at the top, nice and fast. And then with this side of the Q-tip, you're going to push up on the tongue as your student is saying it. So you'll go like this. It'll look something like this. And you're going to move it like that to kind of make it almost not vibrate, but just kind of mimic that sensation. So that once again your students understanding that movement that's kind of expected, and they're going over placement, going over what it might feel like, and where exactly they're gonna have that sensation of the trill. So we'll practice that too. just like that. And then another technique, so now this is moving away from like the Q-tips, is trying to elicit the sound from another sound. So as I said before, the D sound is similar to the placement because it's on the alveolar ridge and it's voiced. So we might do something like hissing with a DR sound. So it might sound something like this. And you're just kind of like hissing and thinking of that DR. So trying to say the dir. In English, I guess it's dir, right? And then trying to hiss at the same time. To just kind of like get, once again, that like airflow.
You're blowing my mind.
Puffing. So that's like hissing, puffing, and thinking of that DR sound. And for visuals, let me grab my. So for visuals,
I feel like, I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
I do know how to trill, but that last one, that hissing while thinking of the DR, I feel like that would do it. I would get it first session if you told me that. That's so cool.
So yeah, that one does help a lot. And then, you know, I use a lot of like visuals in the session. So like this is from, and I think someone had asked this earlier. This is a resource that I have in my TPT store and on my website. And actually we're doing a giveaway. So someone will get the strategies that I have. I use this a lot. Like I go to this, like anytime I have a student that's working on trill or flap, like this is what I pull out all the time. We go through these warm-ups like constantly through like all of the sessions. And then it comes in like these like half sheets. I will print this out and I have my student take these home so that they're constantly practicing at home too. So someone will win this today. But, you know, going back to the trill, with the visual, this is a TR, it's kind of backwards, but with the TR, we'll do kind of the same thing, kind of that like puffing and just kind of getting, once you have once placement is understood and just kind of moving from placement to actually producing the sound, we'll do with puffing of air to once again kind of get that sensation. And we'll do those drills a lot, you know, with the visual, with DR and TR constantly. And if that's not working, there's some more strategies that I got up my sleeve. We do another strategy with the F sound. So I know F sound, completely different, right? Placement.
Yeah.
But this one's focusing on that airflow and that kind of restriction of the airflow so that it kind of forces the tongue to vibrate with the airflow going through. So with the F strategy, you have your student, you know, bite their lip. It's going to be very exaggerated. They're going to bite their lip like they're making an F sound, keeping the tongue up on the alveolar ridge, and they're going to blow really hard. So really, it might look something like this. Oh, and add voicing. You have to add voicing to it. So I don't know if you can hear the trill, but so the whole point is, once again, get the placement there, have your student hold it, get the airflow nice and like it's like forcing that constriction there, getting that tongue relaxed and nice and like wide.
You might forgive me if you already said this and I just was so focused on my lips, but where do you tell them to put their tongue when they're doing that?
On the alveolar ridge.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it's right behind your teeth. Yeah. So we're still thinking placement for trill dar, but this strategy is just to force the airflow almost to like really get that tongue to vibrate, and with voicing. So you have to do it with voicing, because if you just do the F, you're not really going to get anything. But you have to turn your voice box on as well. Tell my students, tongue on the alveolar ridge, nice and relaxed, nice and flat. We're going to make it, try to kind of wave like a flag, and then get nice diaphragmatic breathing in, get nice big puff of air. So we'll do that several times.
Yeah.
And now you can kind of see why I kind of follow this like hierarchy,
Yeah.
like till I eventually get to like these other strategies, because the other concepts are just really important to the sound, to the phoneme. Um, so we talked about kind of like those manual tricks. We talked about hissing, puffing with DR and TR.
Sorry,
Yes.
Liliana, somebody just commented, so glad I'm alone right now.
Oh, I know. Like you might look kind of silly, like trying.
Do you find, are your students, is it common for them to be self-conscious when trying these things, or do you feel like it goes pretty well?
Yeah, and in the beginning too, like I will say, hey, we're gonna sound super silly. We're gonna make some like silly puffs of air. We're gonna, like really try to get our tongue to like really move like a flag.
Yeah.
And so just kind of explaining to them that it's gonna look a little silly in the beginning, but I promise you, it's all for a good reason. We're gonna try to get your tongue to, make that sound.
Okay. And
But
yes, this video will be saved, you guys. Definitely saving. Okay, sorry.
so then I would say another, there's two more strategies that I'll use, and these are kind of like they're a little harder, but they have worked for some of my students too. So raspberries with voicing will kind of also kind of get that sensation of the trill. So you're going to do a raspberry, but you're going to add voicing to it, and you're going to keep your tongue on the alveolar ridge, keeping in mind all of those components that we talked about, the relax, the, nice and flat. And we're going to do just with your lips. So it's kind of like a pigeon call in a way, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, now I'm trying to think of what a raspberry would be like.
Or keeping your tongue on the alveolar ridge.
Okay. And
What
the
do you think? Or tell me what's the feedback?
so
What are you feeling?
for that one I'm having trouble translating it to my tongue, but I think it still gives that feeling that you're supposed to feel, like with the
Mm-hmm.
airflow being what's moving your
Mm-hmm.
articulator. But I think that hissing the DR, and then the one after that, what was it? Was it the F?
The TR or the
The
F?
T. It was the F. I think
I
hissing
think
the
the
DR is
F one,
my favorite.
I've had a lot of success with
Yeah.
the F because of, once again, that like force of the airflow that's going through that really
Yeah.
helps. But yeah, raspberries are a little trickier.
Because
But
a raspberry is like,
yeah, but
right?
you're keeping your tongue kind of relaxed when you're doing a raspberry.
Right. Okay, yeah.
And it's kind of flat as well when you're doing just a regular raspberry, like before like modifying it. Um, so with that one, it's kind of like it's taking that concept into for that technique.
Okay.
So we'll do that. And then if that is not working, sometime with some students, this has worked as well. Let me find my sheet.
And that's the thing,
Um,
like you just never know what's gonna do it for a kid, right?
yeah,
So
like
you have to have all of these tricks up your sleeve.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so like with some students, the visuals really help, the gesture. With the younger kids, I like to call it like our car sound, el sonido del carro.
Mm-hmm.
We'll practice. So we have a little car here and a little motorcycle, and we'll just say like, what sound does the car make when it goes really fast? And we'll slide our finger, and go vroom 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 vroom. Um, so like that's like that V and the VR to kind of get that sound. And it's worked, and with some of my students that has worked, just kind of giving them the visual and just kind of making it or calling it our car sound. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, I can make a car sound. And I'm like, yeah, that's how you trill your tongue. I'm like, no, so now we're gonna apply it to the, our words. So that's like just another technique too that I've felt like has helped a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, so then that's like several of like the tricks that we kind of like went over.
I mean, blowing my mind. And the comments were saying the same. Like everyone is so thankful. I feel like really we kind of like already went through everything.
Yeah,
But
I
is
would
there anything
say,
else missing until like before we jump into the giveaway?
um, I would say just keep in mind, and by the way, guys, I have the tips all on this like sheet too. This is a freebie that's on the on my website too. So
Mhm.
if you're like they're kind of like trying to write down all these things, some of the techniques that I talked about are on this tip sheet.
Mhm.
I would definitely say like for SLPs kind of tackling the trilled R and tap R, and let's say maybe it's not, let's say, for example, you don't speak the language of the student that you're working with, but you're going to do an evaluation with an interpreter, um, and you might not be the person doing, let's say, the actual therapy, but you'll most likely be the person writing the report, writing the goals for the students. I would say like a big takeaway, because I know there are a lot of like monolingual SLPs listening, to really kind of take into consideration the phonotactic constraints of those phonemes, and just kind of keep in mind where where they occur in the positions of words. So if you're writing a goal for a student with trilled R, flap R, keep in mind for trilled R, it occurs in the initial and medial position of words in Spanish, whereas like the tap R is only in the medial and final position of words. So being familiar with those phonotactic constraints and where those sounds occur and with what positions is really important. It's kind of like thinking in terms of English, like our ng sound and g sound, like you
Right.
wouldn't write a goal for initial and g. So, just kind of keep in mind, where, be informed about the phoneme, because even if you don't speak the language, you might still get a student that has difficulty producing the sound, and you might have to do the eval with the use of an interpreter. And so it's just really important to become informed about the language and just, what those phonotactic constraints are.
Awesome. Awesome. So many awesome tips. I can't get over it. I'm so excited. And I saw somebody say that it's the closest they've ever come to being able to do the trilled R. So you are a wonderful teacher.
Oh, thank you guys. That's awesome.
And somebody else said
Any
to the
favorite
room, I think, is a really
resources?
popular one.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
what?
favorite. So someone said favorite. Any favorite resources? I will mention one that I forgot to talk about. So there is a YouTube channel that I always like to use. I'm actually not sure who these people are, but the YouTube channel is called Glessica Phonics, and it's a YouTube channel that goes through all these phonemes. I mean, like they go through all the phonemes, like of different languages, like just all these different phonemes with like the phonetic transcription of the phoneme, and they have a video of a side view. It's like an animated side view of how the tongue looks like and where it is in position. It's kind of like those apps that we use for our tick, but they have like a whole YouTube channel, and you just go on their YouTube and just pick whichever phoneme you want to view. And it's a really good visual tool for your students so that they can see the side view of what it looks like when your tongue is vibrating and where it's at. I use that like all the time
That's awesome.
with my students. So it's Glessica Phonics.
I
Look it up on YouTube.
wonder, there's a website called Seeing Speech. Are you familiar with that?
No, no. What?
Okay. They have like MRI videos of people producing different phonemes, and I wonder
Oh,
if
if they
it's
have
on
like,
there.
yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
nice to see.
I
That
wonder.
that would be another great resource to add. So, what was it called again?
Seeing Speech. It's like Seeing Speech. I want to say it's like .ac.uk or something like that. But if you Google Seeing Speech, it should come
Okay.
up.
I'll look it up and I'll type this in the chat really quick. Lasica
And y'all,
phonics.
I'll save this replay to my feed, but I'm also gonna post it on my website, and I'll have links to the things that we've mentioned, including Liliana's resource and even the link to go sign up for her freebie, because that's gonna be separate. You're not gonna get that in the Rock the R freebie, and to the YouTube channel, I'll find it. Oh,
Hmm.
I really spelled that wrong. Got it.
It's with a K,
Okay.
Glasica or
All right.
Glasica.
So speaking of exciting resources, I think I have like 20 names here. So
Oh,
will you pick a number between 1 and 20?
13.
Okay, Tracy Battistoni. Battistoni. You're our winner, and you are going to
Yay!
get a copy of the Bilingual Speechies, our warm-ups.
So you'll get this. You'll get the trilled and the flap warm-ups with like the ones for your students.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you so much for donating that to the giveaway. And then,
No
but
problem.
y'all, I'll have the link so that you can go get that freebie and everybody can get that. So,
Yeah, and
um,
also too, like if you are interested in this, I have a sale this weekend on my website where it'll be super cheap, because there's 30% off on my website all weekend long. So if you're interested in the resource,
that's awesome. So
just an
be sure to
FYI.
go find her profile on Instagram, follow her, and then trot off to that. Well, you said this weekend, so like right now?
This weekend, so it's from today till Sunday night Central Time.
Well, go get on that, y'all. Well, thank you so much for your time. I
No problem.
so
Thank you
need
for
it.
having me. This whole week has been amazing. I've learned so much from all of the other Instagram Live speakers too. So thank you for like
Thank
hosting
you.
this because it's just so informative.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much. And y'all have a great night. And that is it. That's a wrap on Rock the Art. Thank you for being my final guest. We went out with a
No
bang.
problem. Thank you guys.
Thank
Have
you.
a good
Bye.
night. Bye.